So we just heard a bit about Strategy 2020 and sharing the Presidio, making the Presidio a place that will serve a broad cross-section of people in our community, people from across our community and from around the world, is fundamental to our next 5 years, to Strategy 2020. And I think it's safe to say that the new Presidio Parklands project, which will create a link between Crissy Field and the main post, this incredible joint that gets created between these two most public parts of the Presidio and creates a new portal, a new way for the public to begin their experience of the Presidio, is vitally important. And this is an opportunity that was really brought to us, care of this community, and the vision that was created by Michael Painter and Spur and the activism of a number of people in this room to make sure that when this freeway was replaced, Doyle Drive, this day, by the way, just was one of the most exciting days I can remember when this ugly thing came down. And really exciting to me because suddenly you began to get a sense of the potential of the site already. You know, this social life emerged as the freeway was coming down, and there were hundreds of families there with their children, and there were all these 5-year-olds with little Tonka trucks, you know, and little backhoes and things out there, you know, creating their own little parkland. But what was incredible was you got a sense of the kind of potential of the site and the sort of spectacle that would be possible on the site. And so it was a thrilling moment. But the point I really want to make here is that this opportunity to link together Crissy Field and the main post, to create this continuous ensemble of parkland that stretches from the Officers Club all the way to the waterfront at Crissy Field, really came about as a result of this community. That the community came together and said, okay, yes, we know this freeway is a 2 out of 100 and something we probably shouldn't be driving on in a major earthquake. But if you're going to rebuild it and take more parkland to bring it up to contemporary standards, you need to add some goodies. And one of the goodies that was demanded by the community was this bridge built over the top of the freeway. And that's really the subject that we're talking about. I don't mean a little bridge, I mean a 14-acre bridge of new Presidio Parklands. And what an extraordinary opportunity that is. And it's the thing that we really have been focused on for this last year. So just to refresh everybody's memory about where we are in the process, we began this process in 2014 during the Imagine phase. Thousands of people participated in that process and helped us imagine what the new Presidio Parklands could be during the new Presidio Parklands competition. We are now in the middle of the design phase here in 2015. In 2016 and through 2018, we will be beginning construction, late 2016, finishing up in mid-2018. And I will look forward to seeing all of you. I'll be a little more gray, probably have a lot less hair, but on the Tunnel Top Parklands in the middle of 2018 at the opening. Where we are specifically in terms of the design phase is at the very end of concept design. Concept design began in January, is coming to a close here in May, and we begin this next phase of work that involves really two very important processes. The first is the beginning of our environmental and historic preservation compliance process, this review. We've been gathering a whole collection of comments. We've been in a scoping period. The public can continue to give us comments until June 1st, and those comments will be responded to in the draft EA, but of course the public comment period stays open. So anyone can provide us with comments all the way through the end of July. Then we're going to produce a draft document at the end of summer and circulate that for comment as well. At the same time, we're going to be continuing to work on schematic design, which is when we begin to get down to some of the questions about kind of the materiality and the feeling and the planting and the character of the site. And there are a whole series of public workshops that are woven through that entire process that we're looking forward to seeing all of you in and hoping that you'll all participate in. So I mentioned a bit about community engagement, and Howard talked a bit about it as well. This project has been really a joy to work on. There's been an enormous amount of community interest in the project, and we've been grateful to have so much energy and enthusiasm devoted. And I just wanted to look back over the community participation that we've had up to this point. We've engaged the public in 4 primary ways. Through a project website, we've had 22,000 visitors at the website. Many people have left comments that we've incorporated into the public record. In the gallery, the design lab in the ground floor, building 103, we've had over 7,500 visitors, many of whom have left their comments about the schemes. And as you know, after every public meeting, we change out all the materials in the design lab with the new materials that we present. We've had a series of meetings like this one, both in the Presidio and then out in the neighborhoods. And below you see a list of the neighborhood, some of the neighborhood meetings that we've had. We've taken the project out into the community, gotten really valuable feedback, especially from a number of people that are in communities that aren't regular users of the Presidio, to make sure that the park is as relevant to a broad cross-section of people in our community as possible. And then lastly, we've had a series of weekly project site tours, which has been really a great way to introduce the public to the site. And we've gotten a whole array of different kinds of feedback, 900 different submissions online, 500 comments. We've gotten 400 different pieces of artwork. We're going to have an exhibit at the end of this project of all the artwork we've gotten. It's been fantastic, and a series of emails and letters in the process. And there are a number of themes that have come up, and I wanted to run through them quickly just to give you a sense of some of the feedback that we're getting, because it's played such an important role in the evolution of the project and the evolution of the design. So the first series of comments, I would say, fit into the category of site character. We've heard from the public that they're very hopeful that the site will accentuate, or that the design will accentuate the site's natural beauty. A lot of affection for the character of Crissy Field and pulling that character across the street onto the site. People are very attached to the incredible views the site will offer and want us to enhance them without competing with them. They're interested in keeping the site simple and serene. Don't want the site to be cluttered up with a lot of details. It's very important to people that it be family friendly, that it be safe, that it be well lit, that it be inviting and welcoming. Secondly, we've heard a lot about a different array of experiences that people would like to have on the site. People would like it to be fun, creative. They'd like to have opportunities for play and exploration. They'd like it to be both passive and active, have an array of different kinds of potential experiences on the site. Opportunities for educational programming, outdoor learning, informal exploration, flexible spaces for the arts, learning about nature and human history, and also just a beautiful place to walk. A beautiful place to take a walk, take a stroll among natural areas of beautiful gardens on the site. And third, we've heard a lot of feedback about specific project elements. Probably the most common comment we've heard is people want affordable food. Comfort is really important, and you'll see that runs through all of these comments. Affordable food, restrooms, the question asked more commonly than any other at the Presidio Visitor Center is, where are the restrooms? Visitor comfort and weather. We all know what San Francisco's like in the summer. And the Parklands is a pretty exposed site. So we've heard a lot from people and interest in making sure there are places where people can get out of the wind. Multiple paths and trails that create places for bicyclists and for pedestrians. A small amphitheater, not something for big events, but something for small gatherings, for outdoor learning experiences and things like that. Some subtle interpretive elements woven throughout the site that speak to its history and ecology. And then we've gotten really interesting kind of mixed perspectives about the idea of a campfire in the Presidio, so I thought I'd mention that. There are a number of series of upcoming workshops I just wanted to mention to everybody because, again, we want you to continue to participate in the process as much as you'd like to. We have an upcoming workshop on Saturday, June 13th that's going to focus on details and materials. Saturday, July 18th, some early concepts, schematic design concepts. And then our final schematic design presentation is going to be at the end of the summer on September 17th, and I'm really hoping that I'll see all of you there. There also are a series of workshops out in the neighborhood. We're having one at Spur, the Ortega Library out in the Sunset, the Women's Building in the Mission, and also at the Chinatown Y. So tonight, we're going to talk about a couple of things, and just to talk a bit about where we are and where we're headed. For those of you who've been at the last several workshops, you know that we presented three variations on a theme of the competition scheme that Jim Corner had presented during the competition process. Each of those illustrated different sets of ideas that emerged in the public comment. As a result of the public comment we've received over the last several months, we've narrowed that down to a proposed concept design and also a kind of kit of parts of additional project elements. And so tonight we're going to present both things. We're going to present this proposed concept design as well as this kit of parts of additional project elements. And we're going to be looking to you, the community, tonight and in following weeks to give us your feedback. Which ideas still resonate with you? Which ideas are maybe not resonating as much? Are there some ideas that ended up on the cutting room floor that you're really sorry to see there? And which of these additional project elements are resonating with you the most? The goal being that at the end of this, in about a month's time, that we'll stitch all of this together, we'll narrow it down into one final proposed concept design, and that will be one of the three alternatives that we carry through the environmental compliance process. So that's really the scope of tonight, and I'd like to invite Jim to come up here and talk to you about his incredible, evolving, emerging design for the new Presidio Parklands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure to be back. And thank you to you all for coming out this evening and allowing us to update you and share the latest with you. This is The project, as you know, the tunnels are being built. This is the main parade and the main post. The building we're in right now is here with these windows looking out across the tunnel tops to the bay, across the marsh. And our project is about building all of this out as one new elevated park with great views and a new lower level park tied to the Chrissy Field Center with Mason Street as a lower level learning landscape. This is another view showing those tunnels with the main post, and we will be building out over those tunnels, and you can just begin to imagine the sort of views that you'll get when you're standing 35 feet above grade in this location, clear views to the city, the Palace of Fine Arts, the Alcatraz, the Bay, the Golden Gate Bridge, and all the way back into the Presidio, which offers views which we haven't hitherto had. You know, you could just say this is just another park project, and there are lots of parks around the country being designed and built, but I actually think this is a very significant national, if not international project, simply because of its location. When you get out onto the tunnel tops, this is really the center of San Francisco's psyche, if you will. You're in the context of the bay. You will see the city skyline. You'll look back into all of the Presidio land, across the marsh and across the field to the Golden Gate Bridge, out to the Pacific Ocean, across to the bay and Marin and Angel Island and Alcatraz. So anybody who understands San Francisco's geographical psyche, mental map of itself, this is the location to come. And I think it will be hugely significant and deserving of the status of a national park. And when you step out onto the tunnel tops, you will have an amazing experience, a very simple experience, but a very powerful experience, a visceral experience of being out in the space of the sky, in the space of the bay, and enjoying all of these views. And of course, this is a place not only of great experience and sort of geographical reflection, but also historical reflection, honoring all of the history and the service that has been born in this place. And we've spoken a lot in previous meetings, as well as today with Greg's talk too, about the importance of natural systems, natural resources, ecology, and the environment. And last year, when we won the design competition to move ahead, you can see in this image the idea of Presidio Point, the idea of a new landscape over the tunnel tops, taking in these views and enjoying this context. This was the site plan at that time with a series of new viewing promontories and viewing overlooks and a variety of public spaces. And over the past few months, January, February, March, all the way through really May, we've been engaged in a significant amount of public outreach and public participation. As a result of that, we developed actually 3 alternative variations on a theme. These different variations offered different ideas to do with landscape character, either wilder character or more manicured character, to do with programming and use, from very low intensity uses to higher intensity uses, to different types of landscape look and feel, and the accordance of priority to different moves. These have been in exhibit in the design lab and circulated around the city for several weeks, and we've received an awful lot of input on all 3 variations, and that's allowed us to get to the point that we are at today. And doubtless this design too will continue to evolve and become richer as the process ensues. Here you see a number of public mechanisms whereby we've interacted with people in the community. What we've learned is that these 6 goals here are the main goals that the Trust and the Conservancy put forward as the goals and aspirations for the project. I think all of the public outreach we've received have just reiterated the significance and the value of these same goals. Honor the significance of the Presidio, offer a magnificent experience of the Golden Gate and the Bay, be welcoming to all, integrate the natural landscape of Chrissy Field and the cultural landscape of the main post, create the best place to begin your Presidio experience, and provide exceptional environmental learning opportunities. I think we would add that we've heard three other things quite loud and clear. Number one, keep it simple, open, and flexible. Celebrate the views and the authenticity of this place, and avoid overbuilding, clutter, and too much stuff. So here is the concept design as it stands today. And before I delve into it, I want to show you the same aerial photograph today. So here you are actually looking at the parade ground, the building that we're in today with this window here, the tunnel tops, Doyle Drive, the Crissy Field Center, and the marsh. And this is the build-out of that park. So this is a hugely transformative project. And when you add into that image what's happening here, too, with the Tennessee Hollow project and the Quartermaster's Reach, look at that. So all of this new marshland and creekland tying into the marsh alongside the new Presidio Parklands. This is hugely significant transformation. And then what we're looking at here are basically generally a number of zones through the park. At the beginning, in this more central zone, we have the transit center here, the existing stand of Monterey cypress trees, which we're turning into a new centerpiece as part of a new public space here, removing the vehicular street and the parking. So this now becomes a public piazza, if you will. We call it the Zócalo, which is a Spanish word for the center of a community. The existing trees become the sort of centerpiece. This building is being renovated as part of a new visitor center. The idea of this is that this is the place where people arrive or oriented and gather and assemble. We're proposing in this scheme the retention of this building, and you'll see some options which have to do with either its removal or its rebuilding. But in this scheme, you see what it would be like if we actually retained this building with the visitor center and the transit center and made something of the central Zócalo. Here, we used to extend the lawn. In previous schemes, we brought the main parade lawn down and out and onto the tunnel tops, and we heard a lot of resistance against the scale of a lawn at that scale, mostly to do with water conservation. So we thought it would be nice to actually construct this as actually a series of gardens and to draw the gardens all the way through to the east. And those gardens would comprise mostly succulent planting and drought-tolerant grasses, but have a sort of horticultural flavor in much of the tradition of planting on the Presidio level and the Presidio uplands. And contrast that then to this bluff landscape, this coastal bluff landscape along the embankment as you go down to the lower level, and then bring across some of the Crissy Marsh dune landscape down into the lower level. So this area at the beginning is really about a Zócalo and a series of gardens with seating, all of them oriented towards the Golden Gate Bridge and the views across to the bay. The gardens come across the middle portion of the site, and then we have smaller lawns, much smaller lawns, but sufficient in size to allow for picnicking and gathering and to enjoy the view west to the bridge and the view east out to Alcatraz. We still have the cliff walk and the overlooks, the western overlook and the eastern overlook, a much revised central overlook, and I'll show you here a revised circulation scheme. If you recall, in previous versions, we drew Anza Esplanade all the way through and all the way down to Mason in this location. There are a number of problems with that to do with some logistical issues here, as well as the awkwardness of having a crossing in this particular location. So what we now do is actually sweep a path from the western side of the main post, bring it through the gardens, along the front of this building, and then down east, around the flank, and then down Halleck Street. And we have a large crossing here that would connect to the boardwalk and connect across the marsh and go to the marina and the bay. And here we continue Anza Esplanade down and through to the central overlook, and then down the face of the bluff and across Mason Street here towards the marsh. So these two lines are the primary movement lines connecting the lower landscape to the upper landscape. And then we still have the cliff walk, which is the walk along the top of the bluff, connecting all of the various overlooks, and a series of tertiary paths. These are quite narrow paths that just meander through the various gardens in this landscape. And what we have then are a series of different types of landscape. In this color, you see the garden plantings, which would be a variety of succulents and grasses. In lime, you see the lawn areas. This one is actually scooped out of a hill form in an effort to create a wind-protected hollow, which is oriented towards Alcatraz and the view towards Alcatraz. There's another wind-protected space here, which is looking to the Golden Gate Bridge. And then this is coastal bluff planting, a large-scale restoration project to bring a coastal bluff landscape to the escarpment. And then this lower level has a series of coastal dune landscapes. So you see the upper level landscapes, the upper level gardens will be colorful and textural and varied and have very interesting and stimulating horticultural themes. The coastal bluff will have many of the characteristics of the coastal bluff landscape around the Presidio. Some coastal woodland down in the lower landscape, but mostly coastal dunes and drawing across that natural feeling from the marsh and the bay. This is what we call the concept design, but then we have actually a sort of catalog of components that we're considering as potential additions. And these are things that in the next few weeks and months we need to study further and explore, and also run through you as part of the public process about what things resonate and what things maybe don't resonate so much. In this sort of catalog of additional elements, we have significant new furnishing around the Zocalo, a new meeting and gathering space, a new building to replace this building, increased seating and gathering spaces in the gardens and around the lawn area, various modifications to the overlooks that sort of dramatize the overlooks, especially the western overlook with the cantilevered walk, a number of additional stairs and ramps and ways to get down to the lower landscape level, including an amphitheater here, or actually less an amphitheater, more a series of seating terraces that bring you down from the central overlook, and a variety of other amenities. And that produces this version of the plan. If this was to be the full build-out with that panoply of components, this is the plan that shows the concept plan with all of the potential additional elements added. This is a view of this place today. The main post is here. This is the parade ground in Crissy Field, Crissy Marsh, and the site that we're looking at. And this is it tomorrow, including the new work at Quartermaster's Reach. So today, a lot of concrete, a lot of noise from vehicles, a lot of disconnection, and tomorrow, a new democratic platform floating out into the space of the bay, significantly greener and significantly more interconnected with the adjacent resources of the park. This is a view of the site today, and then the project tomorrow. The new visitor center, the shaped cliff walk with the new bluff face, and the lower level learning landscape, an expanded Crissy Field Center. So again, from a landscape of fragmentation and a concrete jungle to something that is green and interconnected and park-like. This is a view today or yesterday. The tunnels are being built here. This is the main parade. Look at the proximity of this location to the city and the juxtaposition of the density of the city with the generosity of natural resources of the Presidio landscape and the bay, and the landscape tomorrow with the projection out of this new park. You see the new ramp walk down the face of the bluff that comes all the way to Mason and will connect across to Crissy Marsh on a boardwalk and to Crissy Field. So that is now a contiguous connection for people to walk and stroll and cycle and interconnect. And another walk down the eastern flank down to Halleck Street, across Mason, onto a boardwalk across the marsh, out to the marina and along the bay. This is a view of the tunnels today. You're looking to the Golden Gate Bridge and Crissy Field and Crissy Marsh. This is Mason, the Crissy Field Center building. This is the building that we're in today with the main parade. And tomorrow, look at that. So you have, again, massive amounts of fragmentation and disconnection, and tomorrow you'll be able to have this seamless green landscape that just opens up to the space of the bay. And again, the adjacency with the Quartermaster's Reach and the Tennessee Hollow project is very important. And here we're just zooming into that view. You see the tunnel entrances here with westbound traffic, and the eastern lobe of the upper landscape, the central lobe with the central overlook that's connected to Anza Esplanade, and the western lobe with the western overlook looking out to the bridge, the bluff face and the lower learning landscape, and the expanded Crissy Field Center. This is a view today from the main parade. This is the building we're in now. This will be the new visitor center. This is the stand of Monterey cypress trees that we're trying to make into a really strong focal point in the new public piazza. And this is the view out to the bay. And the view tomorrow. A few more people on the lawn perhaps, but here you'll see that if we build a new building or remove this building, it's significantly more open, because this one comes out to this location, and here we're cleaning up that vista. And secondly, this whole horizon line is cleaned up, so that what you're getting instead of a lumpy and cluttered horizon that's narrow is a clean horizon view out to the bay. This is a view today of what we're calling the Zocalo. It's parking. This is a service side of the transit center. The new visitor center would be here. This is the existing building. If we retain this building and build out the piazza surface with a new surface for people to gather and assemble under the space of the trees, this is what this space will look like. And if we remove that building and replace it with a new building that we've been exploring, this is how the Zocalo could function. This building does a couple of interesting things. It's simply a glass vessel that is super transparent. You walk into it and it becomes a glass enclosed space at about the size of this room, but without any opaque walls. It will be glass all around with views all around. The steps you see here are actually seating steps facing south or facing the sun, and you can walk up the steps and come onto the roof where you would have a public garden at that level, elevated views all around. In this view, you're also seeing a lot more furniture around the trees, providing amenities for people to sit and to gather and to assemble. This is the place where the rangers and other tour guides gather people together, get them oriented, and put them on their way. This plan shows the idea for that new building. If you recall the previous scheme, we had two what we call butterfly wings here, which were actually two tilted planes of landscape. Underneath those planes could be two buildings. This is an adaptation of that idea, where here we propose one building with seating steps facing south and looking back along the axis of Anza Esplanade. And here, instead of a building, we have a scalloped earthwork. This is actually a sort of a hill with a carved out hollow inside that hill to provide a wind-protected lawn for picnicking and for gathering, and that lawn looks east to Alcatraz. You can see here a gathering circle with spaces for seating. There's a couple of campfires built in here, as well as a couple of small platforms for stages and introduction, spaces for picnicking, expanded areas for dining, and a variety of furnishing and pathways through that landscape. On the other side, the glass wall of the building could open and close and be totally permeable in good weather, and open to a garden of succulents and grasses with the new horizon looking out to the bridge and the bay. And from the interior of the building, you would enjoy this sort of panoramic view and vista. In front of the building, this is the garden line that's sort of drawn across the project so that you're walking through a series of gardens and plantings to move east and west. And in the central area are carved out two small lawn areas, a western lawn and a central lawn and an eastern lawn. And this area here is the central overlook. This is a view of one of those central vistas today on the tunnel tops, looking at the bridge. And this will be the view tomorrow, through looking at the bay through a series of gardens and plantings. As I mentioned before, those plantings should have horticultural appeal and be delightful all year round. This is a view of the lawn area on the tunnel tops today, looking out to the bridge. And when it's finished as lawn, there's space to put a towel down, to let kids run around, to have picnics and family gatherings. And this is a view looking east to Alcatraz on the tunnel tops. This is one of the mouths of the tunnel, the freeways coming in at this location. You're looking out to Alcatraz. And this is the view in a large meadow that we want to create in the western flank, using tall grasses that will catch the breeze and blow in the wind, with a series of small trails that bring you out to the eastern overlook with a very clear view out to Alcatraz. This area we call the cliff walk, and this is really a walk where you're coming out to where the Presidio landscape, this upper level Presidio landscape, meets the more wild, rustic landscape of the bay. The bluff landscape meets the plateau here, and we have a walk along the top of that. That walk has a series of components: the western overlook, the central overlook, the eastern overlook, and the bluff walk down the face down to Mason. This is a view of the cliff walk today. You're sort of on the northernmost edge of the tunnels looking along. This is Doyle Drive. This will be the lower level learning landscape in the future, which is a bit like this. This is the cliff walk with sculpted furnishing to help protect from wind, but also to create a variety of interesting social situations where people can simply sit and absorb the view in a fairly natural setting with a coastal bluff planted landscape in the foreground. And this is the bluff walk down the face of the bluff, walking people on a 5% ramp, which is a totally ADA compliant, accessible ramp, walking them down through the plantings of the bluff face, coming down to the lower level learning landscape. This is a view looking at the western overlook. Again, this is an additional feature as a sort of cantilevered walk out into the space of the sky and over the bluff to really sort of dramatize that view west to the bridge. And you're looking here at the coastal bluff plantings, the lower level learning and discovery landscape, and the Crissy Field Center with an expansion project over in that location. See the Palace of Fine Arts over here and Alcatraz. This is a view of the central overlook in this location. Now watch this. When that central overlook comes, we're able to raise the horizon to a level that actually occludes the mass of that building. So you can see here, we only have the tunnel tops creating an edge at the moment, but we're building out over that to a point that will actually scale down the impression of that building. And here we have embedded in the ground, again, it's an additional item, but we call it a compass rose, and this is in honor of a lot of people who care about the military history of the Presidio and believe that it's important that there should be an element called a compass rose, and we thought that this would be the best location to put that. The compass rose is actually in recognition of the various expeditions and deployments that happened in this location. The Presidio served as a point, not only a vista point, as I showed before, but also a national point of expedition and deployment to various locations around the world. So this map is literally the map that's inscribed in the pavement of the floor with a series of steel lines, and etched in the steel is the name and the facts surrounding that particular deployment, and whether or not lives were lost as part of that deployment. That was all recorded in the text in the line. And we think this could be a very beautiful thing, reflecting the sky and having some interesting material properties. And then there's a large piece of furniture here for people to reflect, but it's also double-sided, which means they can sit looking in, back to the Presidio and to the main post, or sit out, facing outwards to the bay. This is another view of that compass rose with the seating around it. And we're also exploring another thing that's been a popular suggestion during our outreach effort, which is the idea of a timeline, an interpretive timeline, a series of discrete signage elements that tell the story of the time of the Presidio from sort of pre-settlement all the way through to the current day. In the lower landscape, we have the lower learning landscape and the expansion of the Chrissy Field Center. The learning landscape is really a field of sculpted dunes that are brought over from the marsh, and in those dunes we carve out a series of spaces that can be used for discovery, exploration, and learning. An important addition here, our property line or our project line actually ends here. And in the former concept design I showed you, this path would come here to Mason. As a potential addition, we think it would be interesting to try and take over some of this parking lot and actually move the park west a little bit so that this now becomes a publicly pedestrianized area. The geometry of the walk comes further along Mason, which puts it a lot closer to Chrissy Field. And we're working with the Chrissy Field Refresh Project and the National Park Service for a potential boardwalk across the marsh to continue the geometry of that line all the way to the field, and have a large picnic area and social gathering area, a variety of gardens in here with interactive features and learning features. And here you see the Chrissy Field Center with an expanded building. And here's another important element, a series of terraces, seating terraces, that allow you to face west to the bridge and to the bay, but also to stroll down very easily from the upper level to the lower level. If you remember our previous scheme, we had a larger amphitheater here oriented east to Alcatraz. And again, for a number of logistical reasons, that switched over to this location, which is actually a very smart suggestion, I think, because the views will be extraordinary, but also the connectivity between these two levels is so much more effective in this location. The idea of the seating terraces is that it's really a place where people can sit and rest and just take in the view. We want to design this so that it's really embedded in the coastal bluff landscape, so it's not an alien feature, an overly built or an overly scaled element, but it's something that really nestles you in the slope of the bluff and really gives you this sort of experience of being in that space. The learning landscape offers a variety of sort of rustic settings for children of all ages to come and learn and discover and play. There's sand components, water components, a variety of opportunities for learning about natural ecosystems and historical resources, places to get to work and to manage or steward the land. And in this here, we're showing the new building proposal as an addition to the Chrissy Field Center. Importantly here is the front part of this building, which is understood as a field station, which will be welcoming to all public to come into the field station and to use that as a point of orientation in this lower level. All of the public restrooms would be oriented towards the public space, and it allows the Chrissy Field Center to have its own internal youth campus with outdoor classrooms, a flexible lab, an art lab, and a science lab, and a sort of internalized learning campus. And the architecture for that would be something light and airy and rustic, primarily using wood and steel and glass. So that summarizes where we are. This is the concept design in its base format. And this is the concept design with its various additions. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be exploring the merits and pitfalls of each of those additions in a sort of rational process. This is the site as we see it. I feel that this presentation talks about a lot of details, and I think it's really important to end on the note of just how significant a transformation this is. I think you should all congratulate yourselves on the vision that was initiated when you foresaw that this would be a hugely transformative project. It's significant in terms of connectivity. Look now at how all of the various parklands are interconnected for pedestrians and cyclists and walkers. It's important from the point of view of being a new sort of democratic, symbolic, central platform for viewing the city in the context of the bay. And that's an extraordinary national park experience that no other national park can boast, that you can have this exposure to natural resources, to cultural and historical resources, but in such a civic and urban adjacency is an extraordinary asset. And here, again, you see the significance of connectivity and the drama of this landscape. I do believe that we've kept it relatively open and simple and flexible in response to a lot of feedback that we've heard that it should be just that. And at the end of the day, I think this is the beginning of a very, very significant transformation of this larger landscape. Thank you very much for your patience and attention.